This is an explanation video on how to read and interpret the Astrology Relationship Map Report. Um, Primarily, this report is designed with crossing the dimensions of both Western astrology and Eastern astrology. And the main point here is to understand that when you submit your order or your request, we enter your name. So here in this example, we're going to use the name James Bond. And we're going to use the date of birth of January 1st of 1980. And this report is made for Mr. James Bond. Now, at this time, today, based on this date of birth, James Bond is 38.46 years old. This date is this report was run on June 8th of 2018. And based on this report, we're identifying that his Western zodiac information is that he's a Capricorn, and he is an earth sign. And on the Chinese or the Eastern zodiac, his animal is the goat, his element is an earth, and the type of element has the yin force from the yin or the yang. Now, this report will put first in the 14 different squares. If you see here, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, Cancer, there's a total of about 7 columns here. And then down here, again, it continues with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay, so there's 14 different signs. And the reason why there's 14, even though there's realistically on the Western zodiac, there's a total of 12 signs, is because depending of the Chinese zodiac year, it sometimes crosses in the middle of the sign of Pisces, where some signs of, or some people of a given year of Pisces will land on one Chinese year and the other part of Pisces will land on another, or sometimes that sign will the Chinese zodiac year will change in the middle of Aquarius. So depending on what year the Chinese zodiac year starts, that's why there are 2 double signs for Pisces and for Aquarius. So at the top of each block area, you're going to have the Western zodiac signs that we know, like here, Taurus, Virgo. And depending on the date of birth, these signs will automatically arrange themselves in the order from most compatible to least compatible for the person for whom this report is for. So here for James Bond in this scenario, we're identifying that he is most compatible with Taurus as the #1 most compatible Western zodiac sign. Virgo is second, Capricorn, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, and then Leo, Libra, Aries. And then the worst compatible or the least compatible sign for this person is Sagittarius, which is at the end of the list. So every time that we enter a new date of birth, and if that person is of a different sign, all of the zodiac signs across this entire report change to show the order of compatibility for that zodiac sign. So then the next area is, let's take a look here in this other first block area that's in this section here to the left. Okay, now we're going to concentrate in the column here that says Chinese zodiac. And right here, the way that the Eastern zodiac signs work is that, unlike the Western is like, okay, it depends on what month you're born in, that determines what sign you're in. But in the Eastern zodiac, it's dependent on what Chinese year you're born in. And that Chinese year is always changing with regards to the day of the year upon which it starts. Sometimes it starts like on January 6th, or sometimes it changes to January 30th or February 8th, and each year that date always changes. And it's always within January or February's time period that date actually changes, which is why you have a double Aquarius and a double Pisces sign on this report. So here on the Eastern zodiac sign, we recognize that there's 12 different Chinese zodiac signs, and they're based on 12 different years. And that's the first column here that's under the Chinese zodiac. And the second element to, or the dimension to that Chinese zodiac sign is the element, because unlike the Western zodiac, where if you're a specific sign, you're either going to be earth, air, fire, or wind, or water. Um, in the Chinese zodiac, you have water, fire, metal, wood, earth, and with all of those signs, each Chinese zodiac animal cycles through all different associated elements. So if you go down this list, you're going to see at the very top here that we have a rabbit water, and then it appears again in a different year, rabbit wood, and then rabbit fire, and rabbit earth. And they will cycle through all 5 elements every 12 years, every single sign, all of them. Now, the reason why they're grouped up into 3 sections here, which is ideal, okay, and avoid, is because in accordance to James Bond's Chinese zodiac sign, that zodiac sign is most compatible with the Chinese zodiac signs that are in the ideal section. So we group up those zodiac signs together so that that's what makes the ideal group. And then in this OK group, these are other Chinese zodiac signs that he can get along with decently well, but they're not the most ideal candidates, but he can be in a decent relationship with these people. And then you have the avoid section. This avoid section doesn't necessarily mean that he cannot get along with people in that section, but these are relationships that either he needs to learn how to avoid or limit his exposure, or just understand that those relationships are not the best for the person of this report. Now, every time that this report is made, depending on the date of birth of that person, all of the signs change and shift around. So realistically, on this report, there's a total of over 3.5 million combinations and possibilities and calculations for every single person for whom this report can be run for, period. So it doesn't matter who you are or where you are on the planet. You could be friends with somebody else whose date of birth is maybe 2 days off from yours, and their calculations and the way that all of the signs are organized could be very different from person to person. So in a nutshell, that's what the main dimensions of this report are supposed to do. We're going to go in depth in explaining every single piece of this report, but the core parts of it is to understand that the most compatible zodiac sign to you is going to be in block 1, block 2, 3, in this upper section. And the people that you are not as compatible are going to be toward the end. Now understand that just because you're not compatible with them, it doesn't mean that you can't be in a great relationship with that individual. That's why we have it categorized into 3 additional sections, ideal, okay, and avoid. And when we were doing research for this project to design this, there was something that kept coming up that we kept getting confused and we didn't understand at the time. And it was, well, why are we getting the information that, for example, in this scenario, James Bond here is a Capricorn? Why is it that in some scenarios, some websites say that Capricorn can get along with Sagittarius, and other websites say that he can get along with Taurus? It's kind of like they were opposing each other. They said, yes, you can, and no, you can't. And at first it didn't make sense because the Western zodiac sign websites didn't understand this other dimension as to why it is that you can get along with them and why you can't. But when we cross it with the Chinese zodiac signs that are over here on the left, we're now able to better understand why they can get along. And it just depends, like on looking at it from another dimension, where if we can better understand what year that person was born in and what sign they're in, we can better identify if you can get along with that person extremely well, decently well, or you're going to struggle to have a decent relationship with them. All right. Doesn't mean that you can't get along. It just means that there's going to be some friction. All right, so let's take a look first at what's commonly known to the Western world, the Western zodiac elements. So before we go into talking here what's on the left, let's talk about what's on the right, okay? So regardless of the sign that you will be looking at, you're going to see at the top of each block section is obviously the sign, the numeric compatibility order, and then below it, you're going to see two descriptions. The first one is in the section you, the second one is in the section them. And if you could put into words or a couple of words how this relationship would feel to a person, if you could describe this relationship, that's what these two fields represent. The top one represents the description based on the perspective of the person for who this report is for. The one on the bottom, the them, is the person that's being described and identified in the lower sections. Okay, so if you were to get into a relationship of any type, whether it's intimate or if it's just as friends or whatever, the second person that you would meet, who is being described to be between the date of births in the start date and end date areas, this person would feel like this relationship is a terrific one. But the main person would feel like, hey, we're good prospects. And then that's in the description fields here for Taurus. Now, all of the signs across the board on the very top, the ZT represents the zodiac, the zodiac. Oh, I forgot what the T stand for, but it's okay. The point though is that the overall zodiac compatibility element. The first one is the overall compatibility element. Like, overall, how are you going to be able to get along with people of the sign? So, the overall is an average number that takes into account the following numbers on the right. Okay. The next number, the second one, the ZT compatibility, is going to be like, how compatible or are you able to have a conversation with these people and have the ability to get along with them and find a similar interest in topics of discussion? Like, how easily can you pick up topic like either what's going on in the world or what's going on in movies or in entertainment, based on the wiring of your mind, how are you best able to get along with that person? Is there chemistry there to be able to have an instant click or an instant chemistry factor to get along with that person? Now, the ZT sex. If you were to get involved into an intimate, passionate relationship with this person, how could you measure the level of intimacy? If you could put a number on that, that's what this third number means. But understand this. This number can only be really calculated or be best described if you were to be in an intimate relationship with this person for about 2-3 months or more. You can't be just with this person on a one night stand or be with them just a handful of times and expect the intimacy factor to be at the level that this number is described. The elements that go into calculating this really have to be much more intimate, where you've taken the time to get to know this person sexually, and they have been taking the time to get to know you sexually, and both of you have been able to teach how to please each other sexually in a way where now it feels and it makes sense as to why this calculated number is the way that it is. When both people long to getting to know each other on a deeper level, that's what calculates this number after a period of time. Now, the last number, the communication number, this one here is pretty much like, okay, how are you able to interact and get along? Because something that really affects people is what words you choose to use when you're talking or describing something or you're expressing, and how the other person interprets them. Two people of different mindsets could say the exact same message, but maybe using different words and different emotion when they express those words. And when they express them, the person receiving the message is going to interpret in the message in a positive way or in a negative way. So this factor is very important with the idea of being able to be on the same level of communication. Because if the right words are not properly chosen, then that weighs down on the relationship on another dimension. Okay, so let's talk about the lure section here. We have a masculine lure and a feminine lure, or lure W for women, lure M for masculine for men. Okay, these numbers here were pulled in from multiple reports and studies done on millions of couples and people worldwide. And these numbers reflect the magnetic factor of how attractive it is that you will find a person who is of this sign to you. So for example, in this scenario, let me move the report here a little bit to the right here. Let's look and focus on Taurus here for James Bond, who is a Capricorn. So if James Bond were to be in front of a person that he wants to date, and that person is a Taurus, and let's say that James Bond is looking at the Taurus, who is, let's say in this example, the Taurus is a female. Okay, so the first number, the masculine lure, because James Bond is obviously, let's say he's masculine, he is going to find this Taurus off the back either 88% attractive or 40% attractive. This is just by having a short conversation. Either there's that instant chemistry right away where he thinks that this Taurus is a very attractive person, even with just a 5-minute conversation. Now, those two first numbers represent just the attractiveness instantly, just by being in each other's presence, maybe just having a quick 2 to 5 minute conversation. Like, can we click? Can we have a conversation? Can we get along? That's how attractive are we, and what's the magnetic force that's going to pull us toward each other. Now, once this Capricorn James Bond and this Taurus candidate get to know each other on a deeper level, like they actually go out on a date, maybe they go out a handful of times and they really get to know each other, the last factor is 86% in this scenario. This 86% represents, like, once you get to know that person, what's really going to bring you together. Like, hey, you know what? There may be something here. All right. So this is based on calculations on, like, just the idea of being attracted and how much magnetic force there is for wanting to and desiring to be together without really getting to know each other all too much. Now, these calculations also take into account the possibility of what in the general world the majority of people who are Capricorns and Tauruses, of how likely it is that those two signs come together to marry and to be united. So that's how we're able to calculate this magnetic factor of how attractive it is that the Capricorn and the Taurus find each other. Okay, so that's what describes that first set of calculations that is in every single Western zodiac sign. Now, right before we start describing the ones on the bottom, the next section below, let's take a look at the left side, okay? Because we got to show how the left side and the top combine to create the data that's right in the middle of the core, okay? So on the left side, as we described, we have the ideal, the okay, and the avoid categories. And we're able to identify that because of his Western zodiac sign for James Bond, that he's the goat, we understand that he can best get along with the rabbit, the horse, the goat, and the pig. And those are the Eastern zodiac signs, and they repeat. Now, because of the years, okay, that they're born in, if we look now here to the middle section, all of the age groups are showing from oldest date to most youngest and current date in each block. Okay, so in the ideal section and the okay and in the avoid, that's why the dates are going to be from the oldest date to the most current date, and the age is from the oldest on top to the youngest on the bottom for each block. So the people that are in the green section, for the most part, are going to represent people with whom you would most be able to get along with. And there's something about this relationship from a double dimension where you gravitate toward each other because you're wired in a similar way to where you can get along, to where you're attracted to each other, to where you both want to make the relationship work. Because there's something about how both of you are wired that is so similar in so many ways that it feels like a very easygoing relationship. All right, so that's here in this first screen category. In the second category, in the okay section, these relationships tend to be like relationships that there's a little more friction. These are the more average type of relationships. The majority of the world falls into this category because you don't always understand how to find your soulmate factor, which is what's usually in the green section. This one feels like an average 50-50 relationship where there's some tension on these relationships, but they have a percentage that may keep them together, but there's a greater chance that something will pull them apart because they're not ideal matches. So depending on the calculations that we're going to talk about later will determine how strongly united they will remain or if they'll break apart. Now let's talk about the avoid section. We understand based on our studies of the Eastern astrologies that these are the signs of the Eastern zodiac that are least compatible with the zodiac sign for which the person for this report that was made for. So James Bond's Chinese zodiac of the goat is least compatible with the rat, the ox, and the dog. So those are the three Eastern, sorry, yes, Eastern zodiac signs that James Bond should consider limiting his time with, because it's just a harder relationship to be in. So keep this in mind is like, for example, even though James Bond can get along with the Taurus, and the Taurus is the number one Western zodiac sign with whom him as a Capricorn can get along with, depending on the year that person is born in, is going to determine how well James Bond can actually get along with. So if in the past you've done your studies and your research and you find out that you're, for example, a Capricorn, or if you're an Aries, or if you're a Taurus or a Virgo, or whatever sign it is that you are, if you're in a relationship with that first person or a person who is of that first sign, but you ask yourself, well, I thought I did all my research, I didn't understand why it did work or it fell apart, this is why. Because that person may have been born in a year where there would be a lot of friction between the two of you. And even though per the Western astrology studies, are their main elements, or most other websites will say, yes, you're supposed to be a great match. You are, but only if you're born in a specific year with each other. And if you're not, then you can either be good friends or you can be enemies, depending on what year it is that you're born in. Now, let's go here from the left to right. So in the second column here of the Chinese zodiac, we identified, the main Chinese zodiac. Let's look at the associated element. Because there's 5 elements in the Eastern zodiac, depending on the element that you are, or that person is as well, certain elements are able to better get along with other signs, other elements, and not with others. So we're going to explain that in the element compatibility column that's right here, that has like either a green, red, or yellowish color here in the middle section. All right. So looking at the Chinese compatibility column, overall, between James Bond's being the Chinese goat and understanding his compatibility with all the Chinese zodiac signs here mentioned on the left, this is the Chinese compatibility calculation based on certain studies. And this is how well a goat can get along with the signs here on the left. And then based on the associated element, because we understand that James Bond's element is goat and earth, his earth element, how well can it get along with the element of the Chinese horoscope mentioned here based on the year that these compatible candidates are in? So this factor here, the element compatibility, brings and touches based on 2 different components. The first one is going to be respect, and then the second factor is going to be support. When you're in a relationship and you have an idea or a perspective about something, or there's a certain way that you want to get something done, how is your partner, going to interpret what you just said, or what your desire or your wish is? And at times, depending on the type of element that you are and the type of element that they are, it's either going to be very supportive or it's going to lack it. Now, you can be in a great relationship, but do you ever see those relationships where sometimes the wife or the husband will say like, oh my god, I love him, but when he does this, it bugs me. Or when she does this, it bugs me. And this is the column that's where you pay attention to and you begin to look at that. When you see the red factors, the 20 and the 40, all right, we're going to divide this into 3 different groups, okay? The first one is going to be the 20-40. The second group is going to be the 60s. And the next group is going to be the 80s and 100s, okay? So when we see these calculations here are going to represent James Bond's perspective, all right? So if James Bond, in this scenario, decided to date someone born, for example, in April 20th of 1975, right in this area right here, okay? Then James Bond, even though he's in an awesome, relationship where it's great fun and he feels like it's good prospects, and that person thinks that yes, this relationship's great fun and terrific. This relationship, even though it's ideal, will hold the factor that it feels a little heavy, because James Bond is going to feel that there's times in the relationship where he doesn't receive as much support or as much as much respect from this person who is a Taurus and who is a rabbit with an element of wood. The wood element of this rabbit candidate is somehow clashing in the area of support and respect, and that lack is making James Bond feel like that area is like covered by a 20%. Now, in all other areas like communication and sex and compatibility, they're all very good factors, but he's going to feel like there's not enough support. So when you see the number 20, that means that the partner that they're with maybe feels like it's a 40. They see it like they're receiving more support from James Bond, but James Bond is seeing a 20. So when you see in this column a 40, like this candidate here is 2 spaces down, the other person is going to feel like it's a 20. Like they're not receiving enough support from James Bond, but James Bond is going to feel like he's getting a little more support than that other person. So there's always that little room for being able to pick at each other and, not always be the most ideal. Like there's always that little thing that doesn't make it ideal. That explains the 20-40. The 60%, that is like a 50-50 type of ratio where both partners feel like there is enough support and enough respect for both of them to get along very decently well. So those relationships are pretty good relationships to be in. The more ideal relationships to be in, and the ones that will like really have very great power in getting along with, are the ones that are 80-100. Whoever's the 100% is the person who feels the most level of support and respect from their partner. If you're an 80, yes, you feel like you're getting a lot of respect and support from your partner, but there's still some areas always room for improvement. So depending on if you're the more dominant person or the less dominant person in the relationship, those are some of the best relationships to really be in, and those are the best partners or people or friends to really have around you, because when you fall down, these are not the people who are just going to point and laugh. Maybe they might laugh, but they're going to be the first people to reach for you and say, hey, are you okay? They're going to be the ones that help you up. The ones that are in the 20-40 section, they're going to laugh their butt off first, and once they're done laughing, then they'll think about helping you up. And that's the difference between the 20-40s and the 80-100. In the 60s, yeah, they may worry, but it's going to be a combination of the two, and it just depends on the moment of the scenario. And as you go down into each section, into like from the ideal to the okay and the avoid, you're going to see that this element compatibility factor is there in the positive and negative areas in each of the 3 sections. So keep in mind that it doesn't matter what section you're in, the level of respect and support is going to vary from section to section, but that's what this column represents. And then the third number here is the Chinese overall compatibility, taking into account the first 2 numbers. Of course, then is the description, that is the Chinese zodiac compatibility descriptor. So this describes the relationship in James Bond's perspective and in the eyes of the person being compared, or that James Bond would be comparing himself to on the right side. Okay. So now let's take a look at the main block sections, okay? In the main block section, we identify that in order for you to constitute or be identified to be a Taurus of this specific nature of this category, we identify the start date and the end date of their date of births, for which they would be both a Taurus and, in, let's say for in this example we were looking earlier at the 75, and a rabbit. So it would be a Taurus rabbit would, born in 75, that person would now be 43 years old. So that's how you're able to read this report. And then over here, a Virgo rabbit would be a person who is born between August 23rd of 75 and September 22nd of 75. So on this report, there's no way that a date range can be duplicated again. Without error, that date, that group of days, is never duplicated anywhere else on the report, period. These are very unique individuals that have been identified to be who they are in each category with whom you're going to be compatible to. So there's not going to be another person in, for example, in the Taurus group, against looking for the compatibility of James Bond. There's not going to be another Taurus in this group that is exactly 43.08 years old. Okay? Now understand that this first minimum age is calculating this first date, the start date, against the date of the report. And then the second date represents the max age, based on the information on this report of the report date upon which it was run today. Now, there's two calculations here, the intimate and the friend calculation. If James Bond were to decide to be in an intimate relationship with this Taurus, the first calculation, or the first intimate field here, shows the percentage of how James Bond would feel that he could rate this relationship. Is it an awesome relationship? If he could put a number on it, this would be how that relationship would feel to James Bond. Not necessarily to the other person. The other person may have a slightly different calculation. Usually it's like maybe 2 to 5% off. But does it feel like an amazing relationship, or could this relationship still use work or whatever? If you could put a calculation or a number, this would represent that number. But if you notice, the friendship factor is always a little higher. And the reason why the friend calculation is higher is because in an intimate relationship, there's always room that, and understand this, when you're in an intimate relationship, for some reason, the mindset of a person who is in a relationship is not always to be 100% open. You still kind of like hold something back and away from that person who is your other half. And it's we don't fully understand yet, the depth of that. But we do know that there is like a hidden factor where sometimes you keep some knowledge or some information from your partner. Or at the same time, because there's a dependency factor. All right, the way you depend on your partner is different than the way you depend on your friends. Your friends don't necessarily have to please you and fulfill you in areas that your second half and significant other can, and vice versa. There are things that you can trust in your conversations with a friend that you cannot necessarily have the same level of trust with that person that you're being intimate with. You can, and as well backwards, the reason why sometimes certain friendships feel much better than the intimate relationships is because your friends don't necessarily have to come in and help you pay your bills. They don't have to help you make your bed. They don't have to help you wash the dishes. There are not those other elements that friends have to fill that the intimate sometimes does, that weighs down on how the relationship feels, because now you're both having to step up to do other things that you would do in an intimate relationship that you don't necessarily do in a friendship relationship. And that's why the intimate calculation is a little lower than that of the friends. Now, if we look carefully here at the calculations for the ideal, okay, and avoid, you're going to see that the numbers dramatically drop from ideal to okay. They drop about 15 points or so. And then in the avoid section, they drop 30 points. And that's done on purpose. The calculations vary for those other two sections to show the fact that this is not the most ideal soulmate material. These are just average relationships, or relationships that really weigh upon the spirit of the person. But just because they're not the most ideal candidates or people for you to be around, it doesn't mean that you can't get along with them. Now, when you look at this report, the most important factors to pay attention to are going to be the numbers here in the intimate and in the friend column. If you see the number above 80%, you're going to see those in green. These are great relationships to either be in or to have. And those are the best ones where you will have the least amount of fighting or arguments compared to that of others. If you're below 80% but above 50, that's going to create a yellow category in these columns here. And those are relationships where you can decently get along with. You can have some upsetting moments, but you learn to forgive and forget, and you move on, and you can have a decent relationship where you're just like, oh, it's okay. Now, if you're below that 50%, like the 49.9999 and below, it's going to put you in a red category. And these relationships below those numbers are going to really weigh on your spirit on both sides. These are relationships that are really not going to make it through, or if they do, is because they're both so stubborn that they just both decided that they're going to make it work regardless. Now, as you go to the right, you're going to see that the quantity of the relationships in green kind of dwindle, or they fluctuate, or they change. And sometimes this will let you know, are we good as an intimate couple, or are we better off as friends? And that's up to you to decide. Just because maybe, like for example, here in the Cancer group here for James Bond, maybe there are some relationships that maybe look like they may be better off as friends. But that doesn't mean that they don't stand an opportunity or the possibility of being a good intimate partnership if they were to choose to work it out. Now, as long as you're in the yellow section or above, you're gonna be okay. Ideally, you want to be in a relationship that's in the green section, because the yellow ones still are more prone than the green section to divorce. Now, as we come down here into this lower section, you're gonna see how the red section kind of increases. And you could be in the okay section, but if you've seen this section here, these relationships that are in red are a little harder to digest. They're a little harder to get along with. You're going to see like arguments a little more often. Now, this report doesn't necessarily just apply to like meeting people or dating. What you could do is that you could definitely take this report and compare it to just about anyone in your life. Like if you have an awesome relationship with your father, your mother, your brothers or sisters, or your friends, you could try to identify the date of birth of those people, or if and then try to plug them in and try to locate them on this report. And you basically make the report for you, and it has your date of birth, and then you basically look for the date of birth of your friend or relative or acquaintance or the person that you want to consider dating. And let's say that you don't know their date of birth, but you know for a fact, or you can find out through casual conversation, that they're a Taurus or a Virgo or a Capricorn, and you know more or less exactly how old they are. Understand that you have to nail it in understanding their age. And once you know what their age is and what their sign is, you can just come in here and either look for their DOB, their date of birth, or look for their age. And as soon as you identify that, boom, you can look here to the left and you can look here to the top, and you can see how compatible and where your relationship with that person really stands. Is there enough support or not support? And the reason why these factors matter is because they're going to matter in three different areas of your life. Number one, if you're looking for a partnership, someone to marry, to be happily with, it's important to understand that this is going to affect if you're going to, divorce or remarry and so forth, depending on who that other person is that you're getting with. The second factor that's going to affect is your personal relationships with regards to your circle of friends. If you surround yourself with people who are too toxic for you to be able to get along with, you're gonna feel like you're being held down. You're gonna feel like you're stuck in a rut, like you're not able to succeed, and you're not able to rise above your current conditions and scenarios, because the people around you are just choosing a certain type of language that is not in alignment with who you are as a person, that will help you excel and rise to be the best that you can be. And then the third factor is in making money. If you are working alongside or for, or if you're a business owner and if you are trying to build wealth, And if you are not creating the alliances that you need with the people who would most help you succeed, as a business owner, you're going to struggle. So you may need to consider changing your inner circle of your partners or workers, or whatever it is that you want to call it, and change that. And once you make these changes or restructure the organization so that you group up people accordingly to those that can get along with each other and so forth, then the company will begin to succeed and rise and make money. In our studies, one thing that we were really surprised with is that we discovered that billionaires, okay, with a B as in boy, billionaires use this information exclusively with that in mind. They want to focus on creating the circles of friends and alliances and partnerships that are going to help them build their wealth even more. So they pay for experts that can put this information together and help them analyze people so that they can build those type of relationships. And believe me, we've done this research tremendously well over quite a number of years. And we're very happy that now we can bring this to you. So instead of you having to go to a website and plug in your date of birth and that person's date of birth and try to see if you're compatible, this report shows it all together, all in one spot. You're going to see everyone who is between the ages of 18 to 20 years older than you if you are a male. If you're a female, you can see up to 30 years older than you on this report. And the purpose of this report has a focus on love and on friendships and on business partnerships. So those are the three different areas that this report is awesome for. Now, could there be exceptions to the rule with regards to these descriptions? And the truth is yes. When either side, either the person on this report or the candidate that's being considered, has gone through life trauma or events that are extremely difficult, like divorce, or like they saw somebody die in front of them in a tragic event, or they lost somebody they loved heavily, or they were betrayed, something that's a very traumatic event, something's going to happen in their spirit and their soul where they are no longer aligned in being who they ideally can be, and they're going to be exceptions to what this report's going to show you. So the only way that you're going to identify if that person or candidate is of that nature, or if they are perfectly aligned with this, is getting to know them and trying to find out if they are a victim of something. So in getting to know that person, and if you find out that they're in the same wavelength as you, so for example, if you went through a lot of trauma and they did too, this report's going to realign you to in being able to help you find that match. But if one side went through trauma and the other side did not, there's going to be some friction. All right, so that's something to keep in mind. As long as both sides are equal in wavelengths with regards to their life experiences, this report is going to apply. And in the future, we're going to be showing you other reports that we have also designed, but we just haven't gotten around to publishing them yet on the website, and show you other dimensions of how you can get along with people. And we do hope that this video was able to give you a better understanding of how you can use this report to begin to change your life. Thank you very much for taking the time to step in. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either our Facebook or YouTube channels. You can send us a private message, and we're going to collect a list of questions from the general audience, and we're going to make a general Q&A area on our new website that we're still developing. And we're also going to be launching a video series that goes more in depth into understanding this data further. Feel free to go ahead and give us a thumbs up or a like on our page. Follow us, subscribe so that you can go ahead and get the additional lessons. And if you're ready to order and begin changing your life, please go to our website, shop.astrologyrm.com, which is down here in the bottom in the middle, and order your report for $40 US. You can pay in any currency via PayPal and begin to change your life. A lot of people download this onto their cell phones, and when they're out and about, if they go on a blind date, they find the information, they find out if the person's like what sign there is and how old they really are, and then when they say, hey, give me a second, let me go to the restroom, and you're in the restroom, you have this information in PDF form in your cell phone, you can look them up immediately and see how compatible you are, or when you're with a group of friends, you can learn this on the fly and have it accessible digitally, for you so that you can use it almost anywhere, right? Looking forward to getting to meet you and getting to know you guys. I hope that this information is of great help. We'll see you in the next video.